This is 5 Live Sport.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show.
And England begin their Test series in India on Friday. Over the next hour, we'll preview the series. India haven't lost a home series since England won that 8 years ago. This is going to be a huge ask, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the biggest challenge in cricket now, winning away in India. Not many teams have done that over the last few years. Not many teams have done it in the history of Test match cricket. But England are on a roll, so they've got a sneaky chance, but it's going to be tough.
We will talk with you, Tuffers, about your memories of Indian tours, which are not all great, are they? What makes it so memorable, though?
Well, it's the people, the atmosphere, the food, the landscape. The country is an amazing place to tour. The only trouble is they've got a really good cricket team.
We'll hear from Joe Root and Jack Leach over the next hour, and we'll also get the Indian perspective on the tour. This is Tuffers and Vaughan.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show.
On 5 Live.
I didn't do too bad over there.
No.
I got the odd one out.
Difficult at times, though, wasn't it?
It was difficult at times.
That's what I mean.
Phil, do you know that your probably your first tour to India would have been the early 90s? Is that
92.
correct? 92. I was actually there with the England under-19s, and we bumped into you in the High Commission in Delhi as a
that
young
was the
set
place
of
to
players.
go, Mike.
Yes, and we played darts with the likes of yourself.
We did.
Dermot Reeve. We used to go to the High Commission for egg chips and beans.
We did, and the Boddingtons. That was the only place we could get
can of
Boddingtons.
I mean, we weren't supposed to be having any at that stage as under-19 players, but you guys at the senior England side led the way and made sure that we had a few.
There you go. You lot probably could have done better than us lot, Mike, to be fair, the way we played that tour.
Oh, a can of Boddingtons in the High Commission in Delhi, hey.
And I think they had a gate then. They had a full-size snooker table there as well, didn't they? I mean, times have changed a hell of a lot since
karaoke.
then. Yeah, it was good fun, wasn't it? Yeah.
Neil Fairbrother on karaoke.
Yeah, terrible. Yes. Oh, you don't want that.
Anyhow, it's good to be with you. It's been a very,
Where have you
very
been, chappers?
I've always been here on a Monday, but you've had to change to different nights. I mean, because the football is incessant and on every single night virtually, it is kind of kibosh Tuffers and Vaughan on a Monday night. So I'm glad we're all back together. It's lovely to be back with you, and it's really nice actually. You're talking about one of the great series, isn't it? I mean, I know we always talk about the Ashes, but this is one of the great series, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, particularly at this minute, England are on the back of winning 4 series on the trot. A tremendous 2-0 victory in Sri Lanka in tough conditions. Not the greatest Sri Lankan team, but winning there is never easy. India, in my opinion, have just produced the best performance in my time watching Test match cricket. To win in Australia with a second-string team going 1-0 down, been bowled out for 36 in Adelaide in the pink ball game, then go to Melbourne without the skipper Virat Kohli. Ajinkya Rahane takes the reins and gets 100. They win in Melbourne. They managed to scrape a draw in Sydney somehow back in the whole of the last day. And then to win in Brisbane. I mean, no one beats Australia in Brisbane. No. Yet this young Indian side, full of inexperience, produced an incredible run chase on the last day. And for me, that was the greatest in my time Test series victory of them all because of what they had to put up with and the team that they had to put out and the amount of youngsters that they had to play.
Yeah, the Gabatoir, no one's won there for a long time as well. And that was a full-strength side as well, Mike, wasn't it? Full-strength Aussie side. Smith was back, Warner was back.
1988 was the last time they lost there.
There you go. This Indian team is serious. They seem to have all bases covered. And once they start cracking winning away from home, I mean, they've always been, the best sort of side in their own conditions, virtually, India. But now they're starting to go abroad and win away. I mean, their confidence must be sky high. Just amazing.
We'll drill into the detail of this series very shortly. But just on the broad brushstrokes then, if you're looking at what India did in Australia, particularly in Brisbane and Australia's record there, England will say, all right, well, let's use that because India have lost just one test at home since they lost that 2013 series to England, which was against Australia in 2017. But you will go, okay, look, these records are there to be broken at some point, as has just been proved by India in Brisbane.
Yeah, I think we're going through a year, really, in these tough times for all these sports people that are in these bio bubbles. The cricket has been incredible, the standard. Yeah. But I do think we are seeing more of the underdog winning. You don't have to look at football. Sheffield United win at Manchester United last week. No one gave them a cat in hell's chance. They went and did it. I'm just seeing more of that in sport. So anything's possible. Over 4 matches, though, it's tough. I think you can have a week where it goes really well, but this Indian side will certainly have a couple of weeks where they're going to be very, very powerful. You've just got to hang in there. You've just got to try and take the game to days 4 and 5 and just hope that you're close to them. And then funny things can happen. That's what India did in that series in Australia. They just stayed close to Australia on day 4 and 5. They managed to scrape that draw, as I said, in Sydney. And they've got players. I mean, the difference between what England will come up against in the next few weeks to what they had in Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka had a couple of players in terms of the batting hand, and they had one bowler. The left-arm spinner was very good. I don't think there'll be a weak link. Whichever the 11 is that India put out, I think they'll have 7, probably 8 batters that can get 100, and they'll have 4 bowlers that all can get 5 for. They all can have their moment and their hours bowling that they could rip you apart because they're that good. But this England side, they seem to be onto something. There's something happening with the test team that I think we've done the show for years, and we've always been a little bit, the test team have disappointed us. They've kind of crumbled again, or they've not quite got the consistency levels right. Whereas this last year and a half, we've watched them. They've had the odd little blip. West Indies at home last year when they lost that game, losing that first game in South Africa badly. But other than that, they've been consistent. And they'll have to be, over the next few weeks, very, very consistent to try and take this Indian team to day 4 and 5. And then you just hope then, don't you, Phil? You hope you could just have a little sneaky sniff of putting them under pressure, and you just never know.
Yeah, I think also about this Indian side as well, and especially the youngsters, a lot of them have been playing in IPL, all format crickets. So they don't seem to have any fear. I mean, they seem to think that, I'm going out there batting number 8. Well, I can smack the likes of Mitchell Stark all over the place and score a quick 70 or an 80 and get us over the line and this kind of thing. So I think they're so used to playing. I mean, the crowds, I think, might be a big factor in England's favour. Actually, no crowds.
Let me just explain what's happening. So the 4 tests, the opening 2 will be in Chennai. Ahmedabad will then host the rest of the series. Now, as things stand, all behind closed doors, there is talk that there might be some crowds for the second test, but that's not confirmed at the moment.
No.
As things stand, all behind closed doors.
Yeah, so I think that will help England because, I was talking about in the opening question there, the atmosphere, the people. It's such a cricket-loving nation that, they're scoring singles and twos and the place sort of goes wild, and even getting on the bus on the way to the game, the noise and the enthusiasm and excitement of a test match. It really does sort of play on your nerves, and when you're out there batting, there's all the chat round the bat and everything, and you really do feel that pressure, not only of the Indian team on you, but the sort of the whole nation willing their players to get on top of you. So I think that might help England a little bit, that's for sure.
I must admit, Phil, if by the second test match there is 50% capacity, it would be great, but I also look at it and go, how could it be possible? When you think the England team have just had to do 6 days on their own in a hotel room, and then in a week and a half's time thinking about having potentially 30,000-40,000 in a stadium. I find that quite bizarre, but let's hope and see if that happens. The one thing that this Indian side will not do, they won't care that it's Stuart Broad or Jimmy Anderson bowling. If Jimmy Anderson bowls that ball outside off stump, you felt that the Sri Lankans were petrified of his name. And Stuart Broad, the record that they bring. Rohit Sharma, Shubman Gill, they won't care. If that ball's there to be hit, they're going to hit it. And they won't be worried about Stuart Broad or Jimmy Anderson or the experience that they provide. This Indian batting lineup is so flamboyant. They've got Pujara at number 3, who I believe in Test match cricket, every team needs a Pujara.
Yes,
every single great Test match team needs someone that just likes to bat a long period of time and actually doesn't even look at the score. But it's like, I'm here all day. I'm just going to bat. If I get 55, that's what I'm going to get, because I'm just going to try and wear you all down. And it allows my flamboyant teammates to come and take you down when you're a little bit, get more tired later on in the day. But every team needs a Pujara. And then you've got Virat Kohli back. You've got Rahane in fine form. Rishabh Pant is just strap yourself in when he goes out to bat, because you just know that he's just going to try and attack. Yeah. And if he has a session of batting, you know that he can take the game away from him. Then you've got the likes of Ravi Ashwin, who'll be down at 7 or 8. He's got 4 Test match centuries, very technically strong. He was one of the players that batted out that last day in Sydney. You look at their 11, and Phil, back in '92, was it, Phil? When you look at their 11 England on those weeks and go, how are you going to get 20 wickets? And you need 20 wickets. You obviously need runs, but you need 20 wickets to win a Test match. And you look at their line and go, where are you getting 20 wickets from?
I know. And the other big thing about that is that they're not scared of scoreboard pressure. You go out there, you get 400, 450. They just say, all right, then we'll go past that. You play against other sides, you can put pressure on them when you sort of score a big first innings total. But they seem to sort of revel in it. They revel in it. I mean, the last time England were over there, they got 450. I think they went out and nearly got 1,000, didn't they? You know what I mean? They just flew past you. And those kind of situations.
You're right,
start,
Phil. England did
they start eating you away.
They lost 4-0. England
lost 4-0 and played well.
That is the problem when you play a team like... You can actually play quite well and get hammered. They are that good in their home backyard that you could have 3 days where you think, well, we've played great cricket, and all of a sudden on the last day or the last 2 days, they can just blow you away. That's why they're such a powerful unit.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show
on 5 Live.
Let's talk England, though, and we'll start with Joe Root, because this will be his 100th Test match. It comes in the same country where he made his debut back in 2012. He's been explaining how he stays motivated as he reaches this landmark.
As soon as you start standing still as a batter, the rest of the world will, or the opposition will catch up. There's so much information now, so many trends and different things that teams can look at. And the more you play, the more evidence there is. So I think it's really important that you evolve with the game. The game's always changing, whether that's the impact of the other formats. But Test cricket will always challenge you in different ways. There'll be new guys come on the scene that you've never seen before, even if you're an experienced player. There'll be also guys who have got you out a number of different times and overcoming that mental hurdle and that barrier that wasn't necessarily there in the past. So there's always a different challenge. There's always something there that will test you, along with even media scrutiny at times. Being able to manage that, whether it's ex-players that you really respect going through your game and picking it to pieces. It's all part and parcel of the journey and being a Test player, and it's something that you have to understand. Really, it's not something that you can experience in county cricket. So, using the people around you, having a real clear understanding of what's going on, what's actually happening, and really trusting that is really important.
You're shaking your head at that, Philip. Are you suggesting you're not one of the former players who have questioned his batting technique?
Yeah, I mean, just interested listening to him there. You've got to have a clear understanding about what's going on when you're over there, because the wheels can fall off so quickly. When in '92, Gucci hurt his hand very on in the tour, and it just seemed to completely sort of, like, as you say, the wheels came off without that bloke like leading the ship. Your skipper's not well, and Joe Root not only has got to get a shed full of runs because he's our best player of spin, and the boys look up to him, but he's going to have to captain well on and off the field. He's going to have to be right on the top of his game in every department to sort of like drag the England side along with him. I know he's done that really well so far, and the record shows it as well, but he's got to be, he's got to have an arm round the guys in the evening. He can't just go home and lock himself in his bedroom, you know what I mean? You've got to do so many more things. You know what I mean? Yeah, but I mean, he's got to be, he's not only got to have the tour of his life with the bat, but he's got to have the tour of his life as a captain as well.
But it was also, Michael, by the way, that's from a Test Match special podcast that will be available from Wednesday. Michael's on it, Alistair Cook's on it, Joe Root's parents are on it as well. It's an interesting insight how you can never be 100% satisfied with your technique because of changes in the game, changes in bowlers analysing your technique to try and change their technique to get you out. It was an interesting minute on the mental pressures of being a batsman, I thought.
Yeah, he's a class act. So I've done an interview with him for the paper I work with. I think it's out tomorrow morning, and I had half an hour with him, just asking him questions. And some of his answer, I mean, the one thing that he said every time he's got 100 for England in Test match cricket, they've never lost. which was, wow, I didn't know that. So what he's done, at the end of last year, leading into such a big year for him and the team, is that I think he's assessed that he's got to be a bit more selfish with the bat in hand. He started in Sri Lanka double, big 100, because he knows that if he gets runs and gets hundreds, the record states England don't lose. So he's going to put it on himself this year to try and get as many runs as possible, try and get as many hundreds, and with those stats, it's a very likely chance that England aren't going to lose the game. One of his big things that he says is, we asked him to name his top 5 centuries. And I can't remember when he mentions his first one against New Zealand, he mentions his first against Australia, he mentioned one with Jimmy Anderson at the other end in the Ashes, I think in 2015 at Trent Bridge. But the answer that really kind of hit me went, do you know what, it's not the 5 that I've had, it's the next one. That's the most important and the one that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the one in India. I want one in India now. I've had 2 in Sri Lanka. I can go through the 19. I can pick 2 or 3 from one-day cricket as well, but it's the next one. And this is what real great sports people do, is that they're always on a little bit of edge. They're having he's having a great time of it, but I think in the back of his mind, he's thinking, wait a minute, it's great to do it against Sri Lanka away from home, tough conditions, batting second on both occasions, in a tricky position, particularly that second test match, and he led the way brilliantly with the bat. But you want to do it in India away, you want to do it in Australia. He's yet to get 100 in Australia, and that's something I wouldn't say it's on the back of his mind, but I think he wants to put that to bed later on in the year. His leadership's getting better and better. He's won 25 games as England captain, and I still hear people saying, he's still a young captain. He's won 25 games as an England captain.
If he becomes more selfish batting-wise, does that take anything away from his captaincy?
No, I think the captaincy looks after itself now. I think the players know exactly how he operates. The first year or so that you get the job, it's difficult because you're trying to work out how you're operating as a leader. You're not quite sure of yourself. You're not quite sure how to do it. You've got to remember, you're generally a young man when you get the job, and everyone expects you to lead like a mature human being, and you're not that at the stage that you get the England captain. So it does take a little bit of time. In the last year in particular, I think, Phil, I'm sure will agree, we're seeing an England captain. Before that, I thought we didn't quite knew what kind of style Joe Root was trying to be as an England cricket captain. We're absolutely sure now that he's very calm. You hear that from all the players, that they feel that he's got this great mentality around the dressing room. Joe Root himself spoke brilliantly about Chris Silverwood, who said he's exactly the same, just stays nice and level, doesn't get too excited when it goes well, doesn't get too in the dumps when it goes badly. They look a good combination at the minute, but this next 10 months is the ultimate challenge. India away, New Zealand at home, India at home, and then Australia away. This is what you kind of built up for.
Yeah, and I think also, Tuppers, this England team has sort of found its tempo, and that is led a little bit by Joe Root. I think we mentioned it last week on Tuffers and Vaughan. He has changed his batting, not necessarily his technique and his style too much, even though there's a few little bits and pieces about it that I've noticed. It's just that he doesn't give any chances. From 50 to 100, he always used to try and go through the gears and put pressure back onto the bowlers. Now he's going, I'm going to give you nothing. I'm going to give you nothing. I'm going to make sure I get that 100 and just stay in that second gear. And that's what he's changed most in his batting, is his desire not to impress and put the bowlers under pressure from the opposition. It's about getting that daddy 100 for his side, and that's what.
Hey Phil, do you know the twirl? Do you know the little twirl of the bat in his stance? Have you seen that, chappers, when he twirls his bat? Yeah. I asked him, I said, was that a psychologist to keep you in the here and now that's kind of told you, stay in the here and now, and that's a way of kind of the feel of the hands on the bat? He said, absolutely not. He said, I saw Kane Williamson do it over the winter. He was batting well, so I tried it in the nets and it's worked. I'm stuck with it.
I mean, there is, well, as you say, that's very sort of good of him just to admit that, what I mean? And that just shows the mark of the kind of bloke. But I mean, I think he has done a few things, Mike, hasn't he? He's got a little bit lower to the spin bowler in his stance so he can get down and sweep. I think his foot movement is not going quite so far back, apart from to the spin bowler as well. So there are a few things that, as you say, and I think that this England team, and I mean, and it's the same with Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson. I've listened to them. They're still working at their game. Jimmy Anderson, he felt under pressure in that second Test match, walking out in Gaul, because Stuart Broad had done well in the first Test match. So these guys are forever, and these are senior guys. You know what I mean? They are forever trying to get better, trying to help the team, and that can only help the youngsters.
But Joe Root's he's 30 years of age. He's played 100 games, or will have done in a few days' time. I mean, you dread to think what's possible, really,
He'll
with how many
catch-
games he
he'll
could
catch the
play and how
Leicester.
many runs he could get. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, Alistair Cook's record, what, three and a half thousand runs away from him at the minute. You think, unless he gets a bad injury, he's going to surpass Sir Alistair.
Yeah.
And then you start talking, and this will be, I guess, the ultimate mentality challenge when they start saying, and I think Geoffrey Boycott wrote in a column last week that he feels that he could pass Sachin Tendulkar, which is over 15,000 Test matches.
It's a desire thing, isn't it? By that
correct.
stage, that's what it will be, and that which has been the discussion we've had about, Jimmy at times. To still want to be doing what you're doing in goal, for example, that you've done for so many years. That it's that desire, and that will be the question for Root in 5 years' time, 6 years.
I don't think. How about this one, Mike? I don't think we've seen the best of Joe Root with the bat in his hand.
Ooh.
There you go. I don't think we have.
I think we might have seen the best of him against spin.
Yeah, but against like the Aussies, and he's had some good things. I think that, as you say, he has the capability and the time. As you said, he's only 30 to get better and better and better and better.
I still feel it. I mean, he had a great series in 2-15 against Australia. I think he got 3 centuries. He won Player of the Series, but it's not a series we all remember. If I said, the 2015 Ash, you'd be like, I'll have to kind of pick my brains to remember all the games. If you say 10-11 in Australia when Cookie got all those runs, you remember all the games. 05, 2019, you remember all those games. I don't think Joe Root's had the Ashes series yet that we all go, I remember that.
Yes, Root's Ashes.
Maybe it's going to come in about 10 months' time. That's what he's trying to plan for and make sure that his team are ready, and he'll know with the numbers which are telling him that he has to get a huge amount of runs in Australia for England to win down there.
The others around him are going to need to contribute more than they did in Sri Lanka, aren't they? I mean, you look at the stats, he got 426 runs in total in Sri Lanka. The rest of the top 5 combined, who also played 4 innings across the 2 tests, scored 369. So he's outscoring the other 4 in the top 5. So he needs greater contributions from those around him.
Well, listen, in 1992... I finished 5th in the batting averages.
And what was the result, Philip?
I know. I
Who were some of the names you finished ahead of?
Robin Smith, Graham Gooch, even though he only played a couple of tests or one of the tests. I think even someone like an Alex Stewart might have been behind me. I haven't quite got it to mind. So you're spot on, chappers. You know what I mean? Everyone has got to get runs, and that's down the order at the tail end and everything, just about time and everything. But
the starts are key,
60s and 70s are not good enough over there.
But it's
just before, I'll come back to this current England batting lineup. Can you remember what your average? I need to know more of 92, 93 first of all. What was your batting? Can you remember what your batting average was?
I think it might have been something like 19.
Right.
Or 20. It might have even been 20.
What was good about that tour? What were the real struggles of that tour?
What, on 92?
Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned, Gucci got ill very, very quickly. Just sort of like the travelling around was difficult. The grounds were difficult. Things are a hell of a lot better now. The hotels were a bit tricky as well. But then
very good
also,
nightclub in the Taj Samudra in Delhi, Philip.
Well, there you go. Things have moved on slightly. Things have moved on slightly, Michael. But the difficulty was it's just kind of the games went through your hands like grains of sand. You know what I mean? 1 minute you were doing all right, and as Michael said, you know what I mean. The next, that Richard Pant, whatever his name is, you know what I mean. He can come out and just take things away from you. We lost every toss. And so, we had to really work hard. They batted us out of games. They just flew past us when we did get a good score. And all these kind of things. We just felt that everything was up against us. You've got to have a really strong group and a strong character that in those tough situations, someone really does stand around, put their hands up. And as I said, it's not just getting 65. You know what I mean? Someone's got to go out there and get 170. You know what I mean? Dig deep.
Yeah, I don't think England win by being 10 for 2. Like they were in Sri Lanka on pretty much every occasion. You can't be getting Joe Root out there at 10 for 2 every time and saying, go on, Joe, get us 150 plus if you can. You're looking at some of the players who are in the team or will be playing. You would think Rory Burns has played no cricket. You would think he's going to open with Dom Sibley. Ben Stokes is back into the team again, played no cricket. Will Jofra Archer play? You would think so, with Mark Wood not being there. They'll want that, obviously, one element of pace in the side. Moeen Ali, will he play? He's not played any cricket. So this first test, I mean, as Phil says, the wheels can come off quickly. And it's so important that England start well. If they start well and get a bit of confidence, in sport these days, anything is possible. But you can get blown away the first week, and then it becomes a very, very tricky time. I mean, when England won there in 12-13, it was remarkable. They went 1-0 down. I think everyone thought 4-0, completely blown away. And then they went to Mumbai and won. Then they went to Calcutta and won. Then they drew the last game. It was an incredible series victory, but you just get a sense against this Indian team that are so confident and full of so much expertise. If you start badly against them, I think they're going to walk all over them.
Yeah, and the other thing that happened when we were over there as well is that if someone gets the wood on you early doors in that Test match, like a Sibley, if Ashwin comes on, I think he sort of did it to Ben Duckett a little bit when he went over there, didn't he, or something like that. If Ashwin comes out there and he bowls you 2 Karen balls and gets you for 7 and 2 in the first Test match, you're then going into that second Test match going, I don't really know what's going on here, and then that can just get in your mind. I think Dick Blakey over there, bless him, I think Anil Kumble got him out 6 times for about 10. You know what I mean? All in total, and he was just almost like, I can't go out there. I don't know how to play him.
Phil, I remember that. I'll go back to the High Commission in '92 when I was there. And you were all there having your Boddingtons, and we were having sausage, egg, chips, and beef, and there was apple crumble for dessert. And every time we ordered apple crumble, they went, Blakey.
Poor old Dickie threw up every time he has crumble now.
Has anyone said to you recently that you're looking more and more like Jurgen Klopp?
A couple of times it has. It has been mentioned. I can't really. I mean, I've just got glasses on and a bit of stubble, really, and a lockdown haircut.
I started watching the Liverpool doc this afternoon, and that's why the kind of Jurgen Klopp's in my mind, and he had a bit of a barnet like yours for a while.
It is lockdown hair, isn't it? I mean, it's a proper quiff. But back to the England batting lineup, rather than, mind you, it makes a change from looking like John Turode off MasterChef, I suppose. So,
I can see that. Yeah,
thanks. I don't think it does either of us any favours, that comparison. Right, England's batting lineup. How does this work then, Michael?
Well, Johnny Bairstow's not gone. He's resting at home, which surprised me.
You have criticised that decision.
Yeah, I just think he's back in the Test match team. He's been out of it for a while. He played so well in Sri Lanka. He's 2 Test matches back into his time back into the Test team, and surely you'd want a player who's playing all right in spinning conditions to start against India. But they've made that call. I understand the bio bubble, but it's not easy. Jos Buttler, I find difficult to understand. He's such an important player this year. He's such a high-quality Test match player. Surely it would have been better for him to miss the 2 against Sri Lanka and play the 4 against the best team in the world in India. So I think it'll go as Rory Burns, Sibley, Crawley at 3, Joe Root, Stokes at 5. I've got down Dan Lawrence at 6 or Moeen Ali, depending on what they want to do with Moeen Ali, because he's got a couple of nice scores against India, particularly over there. Butler at 7. Then you go Bess, Archer, Leach, Anderson or Broad. That's what I've got written down. Phil, have you got any changes? I mean, you generally try and sneak in another couple. But
yes, I do indeed. As you say, it's going to be the 3 spinner, or what pair of spinners are going to play. And also, that first Test match, I know it worked very well with Anderson and Broad not being split up. But I mean, you just know what you're going to get with Anderson and Broad, don't you? I mean, they bowled sort of like 40 overs for 41 runs or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
Strikers were petrified of them, weren't they?
Yeah, they might consider playing those 2 together just to really try to sort of keep a bit of control over the Sri Lankans, but I doubt it. I think Michael's spot on there.
Which spin twins are you going for, Phil? If there's 2 of Bess, Leach and Moeen Ali.
Yeah.
Are you sticking with Bess and Jack Leach, who did so well in Sri Lanka, or you bringing Moeen back in?
I know, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, I think I stick with Leach for sure, turning away to the right-handers. Moeen Ali does bring you something with the bat. I think, as you say, he's got a couple of hundreds in Indian conditions. I'm not quite sure. I mean, that is really handy to have coming in at 7. Someone who can then counter-attack with the bat as well. I mean, it suits his game. You know, he can change a game, Moeen Ali. And his records as an off-spinner is good. But then, you know, you'd feel pretty disappointed as Dom Bess, having got a couple of fifers almost, or a fifer and a fourfer in Gaul, and then to be sort of like not selected. So it's going to be a tricky one for him. I'd be tempted to go with Moeen Ali. I would, just
even
because
though he's
I
not
like
played.
Yeah, well, just because he's got more with the bat for me and just a little bit more experience. As spin bowlers,
would you be tempted of playing Moeen Ali at 6?
What instead of
Lawrence, and then
well,
it
there you
brings
go.
you've
That's
got
an
3
idea.
spin options, 3 seam
Yeah.
options. Because I worry of Ben Stokes' bowling. I'm not too sure. You know, he hasn't played any cricket. We know his body's a little bit. You know, it always looks like it's going to snap at any stage with the style of cricketer that Ben Stokes is. You know,
is Dan Lawrence, Mike? Is Dan Lawrence going to score you more runs than Moeen Ali?
I would question not.
No, well there you go. So that
in
is
Indian
an option
conditions
then.
with the way that Moeen plays spin. I mean, Dan looks at a mighty fine young player, but you know, you couldn't say and be guaranteed that he'd score a lot more runs than Moeen Ali.
But one thing the spinners have got to do when they're over there, they've got to be more consistent. Crikey, they have got to get at least 5 or 6 balls down the other end in the right area, because if they drop short or if they start getting milked and played around with, you have got to be so consistent, so accurate, because anything slightly short,
more consistent than what you saw against Sri Lanka. Is that yes, that's what you're saying there. Yeah,
10 times more consistent, I'd say. I mean, they got away with it a bit on some big turning pitches, and I know they were coming out of bubbles and they hadn't played a lot of cricket, but you have got to be so on your money as a spin bowler over there, because anything short, anything falls gone, mate. You know, they're good pitches, they're
Phil,
good players.
can I ask you a question as a spinner? And you're a selector. I'm giving you the role of selector now.
Okay.
I know you've wanted it for a long time. How much do you take in terms of Dominic Best got a lot of wickets in Sri Lanka, got a 5 did Jack Leach, did well in the second innings in the second test when he was under a bit of pressure. How much do you take into the equation as a selector the fact that Sri Lanka, and it's not being they're not that good, but you know that you're coming up against now the powerhouse of India that are very, very good. You know, do you kind of nullify those 2 games, or do you go, wait a minute, he got better and better, and you know he produced a bit of magic in that second innings in the second Test match, and do you go with that, or do you go, wait a minute, we've got someone in Moeen Ali that we feel actually is probably a better fit?
I know. Well, that's the question, isn't it? You know what I mean? Because I think that Dom Bess and Jack Leach did get better and better, and it's like stepping stones in their careers and stepping stones in their growth as spin bowlers, and you know their experience in the games getting better and better and better. But I think sometimes you've got to look at what you saw. You know what I mean? And what you saw was, and I think both of the guys actually said it, didn't they? You know, they came out and said it very honestly. They said, "Oh, crikey, well, that was a bit of luck, that 5 I didn't bowl my best stuff." If you don't bowl that best stuff, A, you're not then getting the 5 and B, you're going for about 4 times as many runs. You know, you cannot bowl 2 balls and over short, 1 a bit full, because there's 12 runs. Simple as that.
Let's hear from.
You've got to stay on as a spin bowler in India. You know,
Well,
they might not even get to stay on.
Let's hear from Jack Leach, playing for the first time in India.
I think there's pressure all the time when you play for England. I think, and certainly I put that pressure on myself. I think, you know, I always want to be doing well for England wherever it is in the world. In India, there's maybe a bit more pressure with what wickets could be like, but we don't know what we're going to come up against. India, obviously, a great side, and they've got all bases covered. So I wouldn't want to have too many assumptions, and I just know that if I can get myself right and in the right headspace and bowling how I know I can, then I can be effective. I just want to bring my best. I think it's been, you know, a long kind of time not playing, and in that time I did a lot of work to try and become, I guess, the bowler that I want to be, and I feel like it's all in there. I just need to bring it out now, and you know, Sri Lanka was a good start, and I feel like I'm going in the right direction.
It's what you said going into that clip, Phil. He just needs to play and bowl and play and bowl and play and bowl, and they haven't had enough of that.
No, and that's why, those two guys it was absolutely perfect preparation for them. You know what I mean? They've got in there, they've got the wickets. They'll be sitting there. They're two very, very honest guys. They'll be sitting there going, listen, I need to get my consistency better. I've got the good ball in there in me, on a pitch that's doing a little bit. But he's saying there, about pressure. I think what he's alluding to there is the pressure when the wicket starts spinning. Well, that's not the pressure for me. The pressure is when they're flat and they're not spinning. You know what I mean?
They'll be flatter over there, won't they, in India?
Yeah, and that's the pressure. You know what I mean? Because, okay, if the wicket's spinning, of course you're under pressure. Phil, go and get them out. Jack, go and get them out.
Yeah.
That is a different kind of pressure, but that's what you're there for, and you kind of like that pressure. It's when they're coming at you and they're looking to dominate you, and it's as flat as anything, and you're not quite knowing where the ball's going. You're not quite confident in then just sort of, doing your variations and plopping it on that spot to hold them. That's the pressure.
Yeah, and the word you've just said, hold them. In days 1, 2, and 3,
their
jobs as a spin twin pair will be to hold an end. You're not going to expect them to rip them out on days 1 and 2 and 3. You've just got to hold an end for Joe Root, the captain, to rotate seamers and just try and play a little bit of the angle changes from the other end with the seam bowlers. But if you get hit, I remember John Embry, I think it wasn't at all, wasn't it? Which was the right-hander that kept on launching him out of Calcutta? Sidhu kept on launching him out of the stages, out of the attack, turning likes of Paul Jarvis back in those days, again and again and again. I mean, if you keep throwing the ball to the seamers, for one, the wickets aren't going to be conducive to that. And you're going to kind of create this them and us situation. That can happen. That's why it's so important to be consistent, stay on, stay in the game, do a job for the team. Understand that if you can go at 2.5 and over, 2.7 and over on days 1, 2 and 3 over in India against this kind of a team, you'd have done your job very nicely.
Exactly, and it's big boy bowling, that is. You know what I mean? You've got to be a big boy bowler. You know what I mean? As you just mentioned, John Embry, one of the best off spinners I've ever seen play the game. You know what I mean? Kind of almost ripped to pieces a little bit over there. So you don't get lucky in India as a spin bowler, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can get a little bit lucky, little short one. Oh, I've cut it straight to point, or come down the wicket and sort of like miss it to the bloke on the drive or something like that. That doesn't happen. You know what I mean?
So in the build-ups this series, then you're talking about holding them. That first 3 days holding them is so important. Not to get hit out of the attack, not to let them cut loose. How can you prepare for that in the build-up? In your training, how do you work to hold them? Do you do specific things as a spinner?
Well, you've got to, not particularly. I mean, it is balls in the nets. It's repetition. It's just overs under your belt. It's rhythm. You know what I mean? Having the confidence that you've done the spot. You've got and you've got to have a very good relationship with your captain. As you say, Joe Root mentioned it earlier. You've got to have clear thinking, because when the so-and-so's hitting the fan, sometimes that thinking can go out the I can remember we walked out on about the third day, and I think I had sort of like 2 men at deep extra cover, you know what I mean? And I sort of walked out, and it was very hot, and they're on about 600, you know what I mean? And I've gone to Graham Hick. I've sort of gone, you're a good player of spin, Hickey. Should I have 2 at deep extra cover? And he said, Tuffers, sorry, mate, I've even lost the plot here. You know what I mean? You kind of can lose the plot a little bit over there.
Tuffers,
so very clear plans.
The 92 tour is the famous Paul Jarvis comment in the team room about Vinod Kambli, the left-hander who'd hardly played for India, and he said, I've seen him in the Bradford Leagues, I could get him out with an orange.
Yeah, that's
he got 2 double centuries.
What it was, he said, Paul Jarvis has said, I'll get him out any time I like. Well, he was bowling, Vinod Kambli was on 222, and Gat walked past him and said, could you get him out now, please,
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show
on 5 Live.
Let's just look at it from the Indian perspective then, and you can put your questions here. Phil and Michael, former IPL and Indian A international, Abhishek Junjunwala joins us. Evening, Abhishek.
Good evening, how are you?
Yeah, very, very good, thank you. Just talking to Michael and Philip right at the start of tonight and talking about the confidence that India must be coming into this series with after what happened in Australia.
Well, absolutely. I mean, they must be buzzing after the results in Australia. But again, England is one of the best sides in world cricket in white ball and test. So I think it'll be an interesting series. It'll all depend how the spinners bowl. Again, I know there'll be a lot of talk about the spinners of both sides, but it'll a lot depend on how the English spinners bowl and how the top order of England bats.
Just before Michael and Phil come in, bearing in mind that India did what they did in Australia without so many key players, does this actually open up some interesting selection dilemmas for the Indians, or not really at all? The established ones who are available just come straight back.
Yeah, I think that'll be the case. You will get the likes of Bumrah and Hardik Pandya and Ishant Sharma straight back into the side. Yes, unfortunate for the guys who have played in Australia and did well. And there might be a case we might not see them play another test for India in the future. So we'll have to wait and see. But all the big guns are back and they will straight walk into the side.
Yeah, no Jadeja though, is there? His thumb's still not recovered, is that correct?
Yeah, Jadeja is not there. That's why they've got Akshar Patel instead of Jadeja.
Okay, and what we don't particularly know too much about him. Tell us a little bit about him.
I mean, he's always been a steady performer. He's somebody who's a bit like Jadeja. He doesn't turn the ball a great deal. He's again a length and line bowler who will bowl pretty straight, try and get LBW and bowled into play rather than getting batsmen nicked off. And he also adds a lot of value with the bat as well. So he's a very good player he's just a very good batsman as well. So I think he can do the job what Ravindra Jadeja does for India in his absence. But again, we'll have to see if he even gets an opportunity to play. It'll all depend on the combination India wants to go, and it'll all depend if Hardik Pandya is fit to bowl. If he bowls, then India might go with two spinners. If he doesn't bowl, then India might just play one spinner in Ashwin.
Oh.
Just the one spinner in India. Just on the pitches, two test matches in Chennai, two in Ahmedabad at this new, what looks a magnificent ground. I mean, back in the day, it was always that you knew you were going to get spinning wickets in India because that's pretty much all they had. But now they've got such an incredible quick bowling armoury. Has the pitches just started to change somewhat as well?
It has changed a lot over the years, because even when I was playing first-class cricket, there was a lot of emphasis on changing the wickets, giving a lot of more opportunity to the fast bowlers, a lot of grass on the pitches, especially in Eden Gardens. I remember we played a lot of matches when even Saurav was playing for Bengal, and he always insisted that we play on green pitches rather than spinning tracks, because I think he wanted a lot of fast bowlers to come from the Indian ranks, and that's why we see such a huge change in the Indian mentality, that we're seeing so many young bowlers who are bowling at 140, 145, and India is not a dominant, is not really depending too much on spin anymore. They're a very fast bowling heavy unit.
Just one player that I've watched him in the IPL, and obviously he made his test debut in Australia. Shubman Gill at the top of the order. He looks like he could in the next 2, 3, 4 years join that kind of pack of real high quality test match batsmen that India have produced.
Well, absolutely. I think the whole of India knew that he's special. There was a lot of talks about him when he played the Under-19 World Cup along with Prithvi Shaw, and a lot of people thought that he is a far better player than Prithvi Shaw coming into the side, and I think he's proving it as well. I think he's an all-round player. He can play the fast bowling well. He's a very good player of spin as well, and that's why he's somebody who's going to be a rock star for Indian cricket, I think, in the next 2 to 3 years.
But is that not far off becoming a team of rock stars with no fear? As both Michael and Phil made the point earlier, because of the IPL, which is by no means a new thing anymore, but because of all the different formats, and there are just seriously talented, competent cricketers who can turn their attentions to anything with, as you've already said, Abhishek, as well, no fear.
Yeah, I think that is you've got to give a lot of credit to Virat Kohli as well for that. I think the way he has nurtured Indian cricket for the last 4 or 5 years, he's brought in that attitude about never giving up, and also the fitness has become a very important part of Indian cricket, the whole domestic circuit as well. Everyone looks up to him. Everyone wants to get as fit as him, as close to him as possible. And mentality-wise, he has completely changed Indian cricket in the last 5-6 years, I think.
Do you think Virat's going to be attacking this series almost with a bit of a point to prove?
Yeah.
I mean,
I hope not.
I think that's going to happen more when they tour England rather than in India. I think I think as a unit and as a team, he would really be focusing a lot when they tour England. Yes, they want to win as many matches as possible in India, but I think he will really want to make a point when they're in England by winning that series if they can.
Abhishek, that's the. I was watching a kind of a YouTube program with some ex-Indian players, and they were saying that is the big one for this Indian team to really be positioned as the best team. You know, they've won in Australia the last 2 times they've been down there. They tend to always win in the home conditions, but to win in England, you know, that's the next big thing. The last time here they lost 4-1 when they brought such a wonderful side. Do you think that's the kind of final hurdle for this Indian team to be really kind of talked about being one of the great Test match teams?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that somewhere is always there in Virat Kohli's mind. Yes, he has done it in Australia, but I think he's desperate to win a Test series in England, and that will help his captaincy go a long way as well. Because there's always doubt about his captaincy now. Obviously, though India has won the series, Virat was back home. All the credit has gone to Ajinkya Rahane. So I think he'll be desperate to win a series abroad, and especially in England.
Like serious questions asked about his captaincy, Abhishek, or more just praising Rahane?
I mean, yes, Rahane has done a wonderful job, and as we all know that they're both very different captains. Rahane is somebody who likes to take the back seat and just do it in the ground. Virat Kohli is out there. He's always very animated. But I think you can't just give all the credit to Rahane. This team is not just built in the 2 months they were in Australia. It has taken years to build this team and instill that attitude in all the players. So a lot of credit has to go to Virat Kohli, though he was absent from Australia. But I think, yes, because Rahane has done it, a lot of credit has gone to him. The best ever overseas win for Indian cricket in the history of Indian cricket. So there's a lot of point which Virat needs to prove going forward.
Just a final one. Obviously, there is a lot of cricket being played at the moment by a lot of international superstar cricketers. We've spoken on this programme about how England are managing it. You know, there's no Johnny Bairstow. Josh Butler will be coming home after the first 2 tests here. In a busy 12 months of cricket, are India managing any of their cricketers in the same way that England are managing theirs?
I think it's very different in India. I mean, they would want to play as many, knowing the cricketers, I've been very fortunate to play with most of them, knowing the cricketers, if they are not injured, they would want to play as much cricket as possible. But I think they will definitely look to give rest to some of the key fast bowlers before the England tour. After the IPL, there's an Asia Cup and there's other matches India is playing. I'm sure there will be a lot of important players will be rested so that they can have a full squad and a fit squad for the England series.
But also with the whole bio bubble thing, and England are conscious of trying to make sure they're not putting too much mental pressure on their players either from being in bio bubbles for too long. I think that's one of the other reasons they're doing it. Is that a consideration as well or not?
Absolutely, that will be a huge consideration as well, because again in the IPL they will be this England series, they are in the bio bubble for 2 months nearly, and then they get a week break and they are straight into the IPL for another 2 months. So these players hardly get any time away from cricket, hardly time get with their families. So I think after the IPL I can see some of them taking a couple of months off if there is not an important series, and get really fit and look forward to the England series after that.
Thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate your insight, Abhishek. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Abhishek Junjunwala, a former IPL and Indian A international. It's interesting to know whether other countries are going to manage their players in the same way that England are managing theirs, Michael, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be looked at. I just think you've got to pinpoint, in such a busy calendar, what are the most important series, and the most important series, if I'm a captain, I want my best team. And if I was Joe Root, I would want my best team for the India away series. I just think it's such a big challenge. You're building towards trying to make sure that they go down to Australia in a few months' time with a mentality of, playing backs to the wall cricket. And at times, you've got to be flamboyant and take the risks. I personally would have wanted my best team for the 4 matches against India. And if that meant 2 or 3 others rested for the 2 against Sri Lanka, I'd have taken that.
Just away from the England-India series, I was just going to mention the Big Bash. Perth Scorchers play Brisbane on Thursday to decide Hull face Sydney in the weekend's final. Both games are on 5 Live Sports Extra. I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago when we were doing this, it felt like we did. Admittedly, I haven't done very many of these with you recently, but I don't know, the Big Bash felt like it had greater prominence here then. And I know they're trying all sorts of different things in Australia to get the interest up. Does it feel like that, Michael? I don't know.
Yeah, I just think a lot of it's like the IPL. I love it, but it just goes on too long.
Yeah.
The Big Bash is exactly the same. I remember it when it first started. It certainly has had more games added, and it's just prolonged. And I think by prolonging it, it's harder. I know in these times it's very difficult to get overseas players because of the quarantine and getting anybody into Australia at the minute. But even like last year when we were in normal times, it was so long that they found it difficult to get overseas players, because an overseas player could go on and pick a similar kind of salary for playing a 10-day T10 tournament, which is happening in Abu Dhabi now, or nipping over to the Pakistan Super League, which is about a 3.5-4 week tournament, and earning similar money. So, I do think they've almost got greedy, and I think it's affected them. India can get greedy because it brings in billions, the IPL.
Well, they're looking at bringing in a couple more franchises,
2 more teams for next year.
So
which they're a powerhouse, and they know that they can get more and more money in, and they can obviously have more and more teams, and over time, who knows where that may end up. But I do look at the Big Bash and think by extending it and making it so long, it's almost lost that zest that we absolutely loved a few years ago.
Yeah, no, and also obviously the more games you play, you do get a couple of stinkers in there. It's not this brilliant. There's not this fantastic game every night. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's
the problem is, Phil, by playing more. It's like, as a player, if you've got 8 games, you've got to be on it for 8 games. If you've got 14 games, you can lose 5 games. Yeah. So you can kind of have a week where you go, can we be bothered this week? We'll come back next week, because it's mentally tough. It's physically draining, the amount of travel that they have to do in Australia. I think they play about 4 too many games in the group stage.
Well, I think you feel that as a spectator as well, Michael, because you'll think, really, these two? I mean, what's on this? So, they only played each other 2 weeks ago, whatever it may be. And also, they've played 14 games, so they've played each other twice. And the top 5 go through to the playoff system out of 8, don't they? So, I mean, there's not that much jeopardy probably in a lot of the games, because
there's an issue with the tournament being so long when overseas players come in for stints.
Yeah.
That's an issue. Overseas comes for a couple of weeks, go back, gets replaced by someone else. Before you've got there, I'm sure I saw someone get 100 in the first. Where's he gone?
The one thing about T20 is that you want every game to have something on it and be an event. And I make you right. Sometimes they just go off of that sort of intensity.
So, final one with prediction for this Test series.
I'll get called negative. I just think India are going to be too strong. I think it'll be 3-0.
Oof, right, okay. Mike, Philip, even?
I think we'll nick one.
3-1.
3-1.
There ain't going to be any draws.
Good to be back with you. Thank you both. Really enjoyed it. See you soon.
Cheers, everyone.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show
on 5 Live.